Yes, indeedy. Welcome to the Upful LIFE Podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz, and this is episode number 29, coming at you live and direct from Isolation Station, deep in the Sierra Nevada foothills of Northern California. And I gotta tell you, I don't even know where to start. But I am so grateful you are tuning in.
Always remember, say I love conquer. The name of Rastafari is so very great. Kalonji said, more people keep the faith. Hey, lift mine eyes to the hills where the sun burns red and the wind blows chill. Oh, lift mine eyes to the hills, and I know that Rastafari live. Yeah, lift mine eyes to the hills where the sun burns red and the wind blows chill.
Wow. Just 3 weeks of total insanity since I last spoke to y'all here on the Upful LIFE Podcast. So I hope everybody that's tuning in is in a safe place, is healthy, and has begun to process the new reality. It's like the virus madness insanity took shape right after I dropped episode 28 with Jessica Dorr. And just overwhelmed by everything like everyone else. It's like, I don't even know where to start. I'm not going to pontificate on the virus or any of the political or any of that shit. That's not what this is for. But normally I'm coming at you live and direct from the Vibe Junkie Studios in Oakland, California, but for episode 29, you're hearing me from Isolation Station up here in the Sierra Nevada foothills in Northern California, not far from Grass Valley, where I lived for about 5 years before I moved to Oakland with my fiance Alicia, and she's up here with me. I've been up here 3 weeks. Here on this sprawling, beautiful ranch farm glory, in a shift pod on the side of a mountain, Burning Man style shift pod, like yurt situation. Alicia, the only time I left the land before today was to get Alicia when her restaurant was forced to close for an unforeseen amount of time, and eventually she was let go from her job of 5 years, like so many Americans, millions of people around the world. That's their reality, and my heart goes out to each and every one of you who's been so adversely affected. And before I go any further, and I just want to acknowledge, you see a lot of social media posts, do you know anyone that actually has the virus? So over time, I think everybody's going to be able to say that. But I happen to know two really awesome cats personally who have been battling the virus and seem to be on the side of recuperation. And that's my man Richie G out there and Dom D, two really monumental humans that I've come to know over the years. So if you're out there listening, both of y'all are generally in the greater New York area. Shout out to Richie G and Dom D. We're pulling for you. And now this podcast, the Upful Life Podcast, is normally a sort of long-form interview situation with an artist, or maybe a long interview and then a short interview. But we're going to switch up the MO to adapt on the fly and bring you some content and programming relative to what we're facing collectively, individually, etc. So we're going to transition the sort of blueprint for this podcast from the long-form deep dive interview to a series of shorter check-ins around the culture. Just want to hear from people what they're living through, how they're living through it, what they're up against, and what they're planning, creating, inspiring, motivating, and giving birth to in terms of moving forward, and how we're going to, navigate this foreboding, uncertain future, continue to support our communities, one another, ourselves, self-care, loving one another, and lifting each other up. And I want to be a conduit and a platform for that here at the Upful Life Podcast. So we're going to later for that music nerd shit and really just be in service instead. So I came up with a plan that I would just call peeps I know and just check in with them and hear what they're up to and what they're doing about it. So that's what's going to happen here. It's going to be a bit more regular instead of every 3 weeks. I like to do one every week. Now, as I mentioned, I'm out on this piece of land. I'm working on a really just shoddy Wi-Fi hotspot situation out in the sticks. So I had to drive down here to my dear friend Maria's place, where she lives about 40 minutes from where I'm staying. And she's not even here. She's been isolating on her own terms, but I'm recording in my car and keeping a healthy social distance and trying to keep my exposure circle limited, since I have had the privilege of being so far and remote that I am doing my damnedest not to interact even with those dearest to me outside of the select few souls that I've decamped to this land with. Now, that being said, we're just going to roll out 3 interviews and probably a song at the very end. But we'll see where this goes for this show moving forward. Ideally, I'd like to get back to the original MO once we enter a new normal culturally and in the music industry. Then I would love to transition to the long-form deep dive that you've come to know and love from the Upful Life Podcast. But we're going to roll with the punches, as they say. So I called upon some really wonderful souls to sort of be a man and woman on the scene and give us a state of the proverbial union from where they stay. So we'll start things off with my former boss at Live for Live Music and one of the most dynamite and inspiring forces of nature in the music industry that I am so privileged to be a member of, and that's Miss KENDALL Corso. Kendall was the creative director and editor-in-chief at Live for Live Music for some time. We worked together for years. It was an absolute joy and a privilege to collaborate with her on a number of things. She always was interested in greenlighting my passion projects, and I'm forever in her debt. So with that said, she's a big major cog in the wheel of BACKLINE, which is a nonprofit organization that came together a few months back with, including Hillary Gleason, who was on this podcast some time ago as well. And I wanted to reach out to Kendall because I knew the work she's doing for, mental health resources and different endeavors to support the music community. Now, it was established in the wake of some high-profile suicides and addiction overdoses that rocked the music community, but really, as she'll explain, it's just set things up so they could be in service for this calamity and catastrophe and typhoon, tsunami, whatever you want to call it, this wave that has engulfed so many industries, but particularly entertainment and music. So we're going to check in with Kendall. She's down in Florida, and she's going to let us know what she's doing and what Backline is doing. Very wise words and heart-filling, empowering words from such a bright, young spirit, Miss Kendall Corso. So we're going to let the reggae music ride out a little bit. That's been my musical prescription thus far, is reggae. Just hearing the Rastaman neck deep in sulfuration, chanting the glory of God has been a real source of meditation and peace, tranquility for me in these troubling times. So think positive. And here comes Kendall Corso, Backline.
I tell you not just like it is, just when you use them out to love and forgive. Africans think positive. I tell you not just like it is, don't can't stop the children from love. Think positive. I tell you not just like it is, just when you use them out to love and forgive.
Hey.
Hey, Kendall.
Hello there.
You hear me good?
Yes.
Awesome. Well, it's unfortunate that we're getting together on the phone here for the circumstances that they are, but I must say it is a joy to hear your voice. How are you?
I'm not too bad, B. Thanks for asking. There's a lot of positivity coming out of what's a pretty dark time, and a lot of that has to do with the connecting that I've been doing with friends, whether it's through FaceTime or phone calls. So I'm always glad to hop on the phone and see what's up.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's been really heart-filling to reconnect with old friends and stay in touch with family and friends during the frightening time. And, we worked together quite a bit in the past, and I must say, really just inspired and admire the work that you've transitioned to do with your company, or organization, I should say, Backline. And before we get into, the specifics of how you guys are rallying for the community in the current situation, for folks that don't know, I would love for you to just break down the basics of what is Backline, how did it come to be, and what do y'all do?
Absolutely. So Backline was actually just launched in October of 2019, so about 6 months ago. And it really came to be after a series of tragic losses that we experienced in the music community through suicide and overdoses and other mental health deaths. And essentially, back after Neil Casal passed away at the end of the summer, some friends and I created a task force with over 50 music industry professionals to gather and ask the questions. What's going on? What exists? What doesn't exist? And how can we connect the dots? And we learned about several other organizations that exist to support the music industry community specifically, especially because it's identified as such an at-risk community. I mean, if you think about it, anyone that lives on the road is, experiencing long-distance relationships or no relationships at all. It's difficult to establish healthy routines. They're spending the majority of their lives away from home, so there's no real structure to their lives, and it's difficult to create healthy habits, which, of course, can lead to lack of happiness. So we identified key organizations that are doing great work out there and created a website to kind of put them all under one platform. So it started as a directory. And as things evolved, we found a team of clinicians that resonated with our mission of connecting the music industry with mental health and wellness resources, and created what we're calling the case management program. So anyone that's seeking help can go to our website and connect with one of our clinicians to talk on the phone for free for up to an hour to see what they're experiencing in life, where they're located, if they have insurance, if they have other financial instabilities, and we try to create a plan for them that suits them and their situation. So ultimately, our goal has always been to connect the music industry and their family, because they're also affected, with these mental health and wellness resources as a means to create a better work life. Because anyone that works in the music industry knows that that is your life. And there's no office hours. And you're expected to work as long as there is work. And there aren't really acceptable excuses. So it's a fun industry to work in. I've worked in it for over 10 years, but there are definitely some challenges. So it really starts with the self and taking care of yourself to create balance in order to really thrive.
Yeah, I mean, that's fucking beautiful and so necessary. It's really just wonderful to hear you spell it all out, because obviously I've been following along since day one, and I've had the pleasure of having your partner in this mission, Hillary Gleason, on the show, and it was before Backline, but just knowing, you know, about her work and like how you're approaching it, and then hearing you lay it out like that, it's really like a revolutionary thing, because the sort of hamster wheel of the music industry culture, that go, no excuses, with all the added, self-destructive habits or lack of resources, for you to coalesce and step up into that space, is just amazing work. So kudos on behalf of everyone in the music industry. Thank you for taking the reins. I would be curious if you wouldn't mind just referencing a couple of the other organizations that you mentioned that, you've sort of worked with or partnered with or even inspired your work.
Sure. So Sweet Relief is a wonderful organization. Right now they have a fund going for people that are losing work right now as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. And they've received thousands of applications so far, and lots of people are sending donors their way to really help kind of fill this hole right now as people are experiencing cleared schedules. We're just coming out of the off season, going into the festival season, and a lot of people are really worried about not working for the next however long because their whole year led up to it. So Sweet Relief is a great one. Music Cares is also a wonderful organization that the Grammys started. They provide financial relief, kind of like a safety net for musicians who need it. If you need to go to rehab and you don't have the money, you can go through an application process and they'll help you get the help that you need in order to survive.
Right on. Thank you for those. And yeah, I've been seeing a lot of the work that Sweet Relief has been doing as well. It's equally admirable, and we appreciate all the folks that are coming together in this capacity. And as you spelled out and laid out the basics and the blueprint and the mission of Backline, I couldn't help but think this virus and the obvious fallout and uncertain future is in essence a perfect storm, for lack of a better euphemism, for what you do. Because just as soon as you got your cards, you're lined up to do the work, the tsunami arrived. And for everyone's sake, you're already in existence. So you're not scrambling so much. You have things in place to work on. So if you wouldn't mind just letting the people that are listening know, like, how are you approaching and working with musicians and music industry people during specifically the COVID-19 situation?
Sure. Yeah. So, as soon as COVID-19 started to progress in the United States and large gatherings started to get canceled or postponed, that's really when the music industry started to collapse. Shows, festivals, tours all over the country were canceled or postponed within a matter of days, and that meant no money, and people started to really freak out. So with no money, we felt that it wasn't the right thing to do to promote our service of connecting people with therapists, because people don't necessarily have the luxury of a budget for therapists right now. though some do, and that case management program is still open. But our main pivot was creating these online support groups, and those started 2 weeks ago. And I don't even know what day it is right now, but it was basically the week that shit started going down. And the support groups took place on Zoom, and they were led by our clinical director, Zach Borer, as well as our clinical advisor, Dr. Chaim Newman. And he's also the co-founder of the TOR Research Health Initiative, who's currently conducting studies and research about what makes touring life specifically stressful, and then we'll work together to use that information to make it better. So that's a power duo, and they started those support groups just really as a one-time thing, but we've since continued. And they're built to address the stress and anxieties associated with COVID-19, our industry fallout, our financial instability, and just the confusion of being home for the first time in however long you've been working. I mean, a lot of these touring professionals have roommates and have dingy living situations because they're never home. They just need a place to keep their things. So now they're stuck and they have nowhere to go, and it's illegal to go outside in some places. And it's a really perfect storm for some crises. And, especially for people with addiction problems, there's just a lot of fear associated with what's going on. So our first week of the support group saw over 300 participants from all over the world, which was really, really inspiring. And it's not so much of a psychoanalytical therapy session as it is just a chance to share how you're affected, how you're pissed off that, these things are happening that you have no control over. And it's a really safe space to exchange these stories and feel like you're not alone. And for whatever reason, after 90 minutes of a lot of tears, you feel really good and relieved and connected. So those support groups are going to continue happening bi-weekly until we don't need them anymore. And we've already had 4 so far, and there's a lot of familiar faces coming back each week, and it already is starting to feel like a family, which is really wonderful. So since launching those support groups, I've set my soul out to expand on this mission of providing these mental health and wellness resources to the people that need them wherever they are, which right now happens to be at home. So we've partnered with a couple of other organizations, Frequency Mind, Fit on Tour, and the TOR Research Health Initiative, to bring yoga, meditation, and breath work for free on our platforms for people to tap into when they need it. And I'm feeling really good about that, and that starts this week.
Wow, that's incredible. And I got to say, meditation and yoga is part of my daily routine, even more so now that we're having all this time to ourselves. So I can only imagine how much of a relief and comfort, security that being available is. You've referenced the website a couple times, so just for folks, what is the best way to really find this out right in front of you on your phone, on your computer, like a social media website?
Yeah.
How do they get you?
Head to www.backline.care, backline.care. I'm also really active on our Instagram page, which is @backline.care.
Right on, right on. Now, I know you to be just a very positive sort of life force, as long as I've known you personally and professionally. So I got to know that it's not all gloom and doom with Kendall, even with what we're up against. So if you wouldn't mind just taking off the backline hat per se and just speak to the community or your friends or anyone who may need to hear or see a silver lining, if you will.
Yeah. So we're in the weirdest times ever, but it's a very rare opportunity to have all this free focusing on. This is really a good opportunity to learn new stuff, to practice new methods of happiness, to learn how to breathe, meditate, and not think for a couple of minutes. And if you ever dreamt about going to France, learn fucking French, you know? Like, you have time to really sharpen the tools and put in the tool belt and level up so that when we return back to reality, we have all these new skills and tools to applicate to our normal lives, because the reintegration period into the work life, especially in the music industry, is going to be fucking hard. It's not going to be easy to work 20-hour days after sleeping for 3 months or whatever the fuck. So don't sleep for 3 months, and create your own routine, create your own structure, hold yourself accountable to a couple of things. It takes 3 weeks to learn a new habit. So we have that time. Now's the time to learn that stuff. I feel like, especially for the music industry and especially for touring professionals, if you were to ask them to sit down in a normal day and not think or meditate for 10 minutes, they'd laugh in your face because they just don't have the capacity to do that. But if they were to start learning how to do that right now and create space for that in their life so that it's part of their daily routine, and then apply it when they're back on the road, holy shit, man. Like, it's just part of the revolution that will make the music industry prioritize mental health and wellness. And that's fucking important.
Aho and amen. That is just really, really righteous wisdom, salient and appropriate and inspiring. I got to say, I've already begun to internalize a lot of that, so I really can connect with what you're putting down, and I agree, because, you know, I'm not a touring musician, but my life tends to be go, 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 like so many folks, and creating that space and that practice and that peace will be so crucial as we step back into the world, a new world. It might as well be our better or even best selves. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to surprise you with one before we get off the phone. Since I know you from the music thing, and we share a lot of the, you know, the same experiences out there, is there any one artist or song or show or anything that's getting you through?
Give me a second.
Sorry, I had to.
I know. It's interesting.
I lost you.
Out 3 weeks or so. Tame Impala.
That's crazy that just happened. Like, your entire answer didn't come through. All I heard at the end was Tame Impala. Tame Impala. So that's good enough. That's like, you know, the universe kind of nudging me for trying to pull one on you. But at least we got, you know. So I don't know how you got there, but the people will know Tame Impala. So right on.
Good shit.
All right, Miss KENDALL Corso. Thank you so much for your time, your energy, your spirit, and the work that you do. And of course, getting on the phone with me on the Upful LIFE Podcast. And we'll do it again down the road.
Can't wait. Thanks so much, B.
All right. Stay healthy. I know you're staying home.
You too.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Bye. I want to say thank you to KENDALL Corso of BACKLINE. Please donate to BACKLINE. They can really use any and all support. You can find how to do that at their website, backline.care. Kendall, just so awesome. Thank you for coming on the show. We'll have to do it again down the road. And we really appreciate all the hard work with Backline at these difficult times. Now we're going to move over and transition to my man CP, Chris Perella, the owner and talent buyer of the Ardmore Music Hall just outside of Philadelphia. Chris was episode 2 special guest, and that was a wonderful walk down memory lane and talk about his career journey, and a lot has happened in the interim year and a half since we talked to Chris, but we don't get into that. We get into the real. We get into what's going on with the virus and its effects on his business, on the Philly music culture at large. We talk a little bit about his personal situation and how he's dealing, and then of course I wanted to give Chris the opportunity to wax philosophic a little bit about what a new reality could be for the music industry, and specifically independent concert promoters and smaller venues. So that's really interesting stuff, and is a bit forward thinking and progressive. And you know, I'd follow Chris just about anywhere, as I tell him in the interview. So have a listen to about a 33-minute-ish, I think, or maybe a little longer than that. We were trying to do like 15, 20, and we hadn't talked in a while. We even talked on the phone for like 20-ish minutes before we started recording. But I love this dude. It was an absolute joy to work for him. And back in the Blockley days in Philly, around 2012, 2013, and he gave me a few opportunities that I really ran with that blossomed into fantastic professional and personal relationships. So large up yourself, CP. This is Chris Perella in Ardmore, PA, on the Upful Life Podcast, episode 29, Isolation Station. Chris.
Hey.
He gets here. How you doing, my friend?
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing, the best I can. Trying to keep a positive attitude and keep my energy focused on everybody's health and awareness and such. But thanks for taking the time to come on the Upful Life Podcast again. Loved your episode number 2 that we recently relived. It's a popular one.
Nice to relive. Although, as I said, I got to get back on and dig deeper on some of the more ridiculous stories that we've shared in our experiences. But
agreed.
Yeah, it was nice to have some trips down memory lane with that.
Yeah, and to be honest, that was episode 2. I was just kind of getting my wings. So, I was on that, I want to be deep and philosophical, and now I think I found a happy medium. And actually, obviously this conversation will be a little different, but hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And once, the music business and culture is back in full swing, we'll do round 2 with all the ridiculousness.
Would love it.
So I'm talking to you from a very rural area in Northern California, up near Grass Valley, Nevada City. And you're, as I understand, recently just moved out of Philadelphia to the burbs near where your venue is. Am I right?
I am in Ardmore, Pennsylvania.
And you're the owner and talent buyer of the Ardmore Music Hall.
I am. That's the home base. We've started to kind of develop our own team of accounts and projects around these parts, but Ardmore Music Hall is definitely the mothership.
Indeed, and I know it's a much beloved and celebrated venue. I've had the pleasure for working for you in the past, and so I know how you do things, and it's second to none operation, and you're definitely a people person. So let's get right to it, man. What's going on with the venue and your staff, and just kind of walk us through how you had to shut things down, and then we'll get into what is happening.
Yeah. Well, we're we're trying to take it day by day, because for a minute there, every day was a completely new set of information, freakouts, uncertainty, re-scrambling, and that's still going on. But I think things have leveled out a little bit as far as people understanding that, okay, we're in this for the long haul, both in terms of what we're confronting with COVID, and also wanting to be here and in the best shape possible whenever we emerge, and not knowing when that is. We're trying to just pace ourselves a little bit. The first week and a half after this all exploded was roller coaster by the hour. New developments, new stupid things that you're hearing from our idiot in chief. Just really intense news reports about what's going on in other parts of the world, and then suddenly, as you're a sports guy among other things, when you start seeing the NBA cancel and major leagues pause the season,
March Madness, yeah,
it's insane, and it feels good for everybody's sanity that I think we've all reached a place of relative acceptance, and are now digging in to just figure out how to handle the short term and set ourselves up in the long term.
Indeed. What are some of the realities as the owner and talent buyer both, in terms of what you had to navigate with artist cancellations, tour cancellations, events shutting down, and also on the staff side? Just give the folks an understanding of how you navigated those, because they couldn't be easy on either side of the coin.
Yeah, so I would say I was amazed and pleasantly surprised at the I don't even want to say camaraderie, because it wasn't warm. It was panicked, and yet it was organized. The way that the booking industry just sort of realized what was in front of us, hunkered down, and cooperatively figured out a rescheduling of fundamentally the entire year in a really short amount of time. And I can't speak for the arena size and some of the big tours that I'm sure are just unthinkably difficult to reconfigure. But for us, we at this point we've moved everything into at least mid to late May, and for 2 months worth of shows, there hasn't been a single contractual disagreement. There hasn't been a single shouting match. I think everybody understands that this is a real shit sandwich for all of us, and that absolutely nobody is in good position here, and our industry is only going to work if we all can survive this. So I've been just, again, pleasantly surprised that everybody is kind of hunkered down and focused and just figured it out. And so we entered this flurry of activity right after this all went down, where suddenly March and getting into mid-April needed to be flipped on a dime to new dates, cramming essentially the entire year of touring into one season, late summer and fall. And it was and is really intense, and we're doing that for Ardmore Music Hall, but we booked Milk Boy downtown. We booked 118 North in Wayne out in the burbs. We're involved with Underground Arts and other accounts. I'm involved with Everyone Orchestra, as you know, which is a whole other layer of crazy, because Everyone Orchestra puts together players that are committed to other core projects generally, and we kind of slot in between and put together interesting collaborations. And suddenly when those collaborations have to move shows, not so simple, because you're waiting to hear, when's Mo rescheduling, when's Pigeons Playing Ping Pong rescheduling, when's String Cheese Incident rescheduling. So, just the sum of all those parts, for me as a booking guy, both on the venue and artist side, has been complete and utter chaos. And I think that everybody's handled it admirably, because what choice did we have? Everybody needed to just punt, and yet do it in a way that set up a follow-up plan, an immediate plan B, because we're all going to need gigs as soon as we can get them. Yeah.
Wow. Just, you can't there's no preparatory course for an onslaught, a tsunami of panic and cancellations of that nature. So I can't imagine it was something that there's a playbook for, or you're really flying by the seat of your pants. So it is reassuring to hear that everybody seemed to work in concert and congruent with one another to make whatever changes could, because that could have been, even more of a clusterfuck should have people gotten territorial or stuff. So that it's heartwarming to hear that, you know, in these times, people really working with each other in the business.
That's been one of the most positive takeaways for sure.
And how about with your staff?
The team side has been equally intense because my role more and more has become, puppeteer is not the word I'm looking for, but I'm wearing a lot of hats and helping oversee a staff of, at this point, just for the music hall, our partners Ripplewood next door and 118 North out in Wayne. You know, we've sort of developed this venue restaurant group that has 90, 100 employees, and music hall is my biggest focus. But what we're talking about there spills into these other businesses, and at the end of the day, we've taken on a much bigger level of responsibility than when you and I were working together at the Blockley. You know, we've built out this really well-oiled machine with a lot of really amazing and professional people who now rely on us for their livelihood, and vice versa. And I've felt that responsibility very heavily and strongly from the minute that this all started going down, and just felt like, if I was working for Live Nation or CID or whatever, if this was a corporate environment, there would be formal and detailed and logistical communication about, what to expect, what's happening on the HR side, on the payroll side, on the, policy side. And so it's something that me and my partners dove into immediately because, you and I have talked a lot about how I really feel like I'm only as good as my team, and I've never wanted to be a guy that everything hinges on. I want Jesse and Julian on the production side, and Sarah and Kate and Mike and my operations people, and Graham and Dan and everybody who is involved on booking, marketing, etc. These people are all essential to me being able to keep my head on straight with all the different stuff that we juggle. And so that was a priority immediately, and we dug in. We figured out a short-term plan to support everybody, and now we're every single day navigating the developments from the stimulus bill and some SBA small business support options, and trying to advise people on best practice for unemployment for our hourly staff and our service staff. And I think just having that communication and showing that we genuinely want to make sure everybody's got some real support and some meaningful protection during this time has been great for morale. Everybody feels like, okay, we don't know what the hell is going to happen, but at least we're all talking about it. We're all thinking about each other. We're all, prepared to figure it out together. And that has kept everybody engaged. It's kept everybody calm for the most part. So it's, it's scary, it's crazy, but we're positioned to, keep everybody afloat, and we're going to do that one way or another.
Right on. Yeah, man. I mean, I gotta say, I know what it feels like to work for you. Work with you is actually how you make it feel. And, it's awesome to hear just how the collaborative efforts of your team, and sort of, not everybody would be willing to just hunker down and ride it out with the uncertain future, what it is. But you earn that kind of loyalty, and it's because of how you carry it and what you do for your people. And I think it's a testament to, Ardmore Music Hall, what you've built there, that, you guys are able to confront it like this, unified and, with a really good energy. So I'm happy to hear that. And I wanted to give you the opportunity to let folks know, since you kind of laid out what you're up against, how can fans, not just in your metropolitan area, but people who listen to this podcast or want to support independent concert promoters and venues like yourself, what are some of the ways you guys are either raising money or supporting artists, etc.?
Well, the first thing we did was set up a GoFundMe for the staff, because we just, there's only so long that we can pay a team of people who are largely paid with event-driven and tip-driven income, and suddenly all of that has dried up. So the GoFundMe was meant as a safety net. We decided to pay out our team for at least the remainder of March. Once we shut down on the 12th, we wanted people to just know immediately that while this all hits the fan, the next couple weeks are figured out for all of them. Beyond that, you can't sustain for very long with 50, 60, 80, 100 employees. We're figuring that out, like I said, day by day. But I think ultimately we want to produce some creative ideas during this time that allow people to support us in a way that doesn't feel like we're begging, because we're fortunate on a lot of levels. We're like I said, we're prepared for the long haul. We're looking deeply into small business loans, business interruption insurance, trying to find ways that we can not only keep the business in a healthy enough place that we're, not completely limping by the time we reopen, but also keep our whole team in a good place. And in the meantime, it's difficult to move a whole lot ahead when we've got this stay-at-home level, hovering around us. Who knows when a 600-cap venue is going to be open, but I have to think that a stay-at-home is going to be somewhat temporary. And so when we get to that point, can we have 15 people in the building to get Steve Kimmock and Mark Brownstein and Magner and Tommy Hamilton and Eli Winderman and a lot of our friends and musicians in the area, could they come in and do a live stream audience free with the Nugs setup that we have in-house? Yeah, 100%. And to be able to do that pay-per-view and raise some legitimate money for those artists would mean a lot to us. And it would also, continue to kind of pad our ability to keep our staff in a good place. But we can't do it right now because I think I can certainly speak for myself that I'm seeing my wife and my kid, and that's it. And I think the most people are in that boat right now. So, we've got some ideas. We've got a ton of archives and amazing audio recordings that we're sifting through, and we want to sell them to targeted, people who attended that show, try to raise some money for both our team and for the artists. We are, again, we have the GoFundMe for people who have, by the way, been insanely generous, and it's appreciated on a level that I'll never quite be able to express, just to help our staff and anybody who, while they're waiting for unemployment, suddenly finds themselves struggling to pay a bill. And then, I think there's just understanding that there will be a need to support what we're all doing and what the musicians that frequent our places are doing as soon as we can do it. Because, there's restrictions right now that just can't be overcome. But when we have a show, whether it's June or August or whenever it is, we need the show to be well attended. And we're going to need people to, to support the arts. And I think that's across the board. So my hope is that we can find a tactful way to, keep our future schedule on people's radars and hit the ground running as soon as we can safely do so.
Right on. Yeah, that sounds like exciting stuff. There's a great network of local musicians that, are family to your venue. And I'm sure that once the parameters or goalposts are moved to where you could pull something like that off, it's going to be absolutely amazing. And of course, it's bigger than just Philly area and Ardmore. When that happens, be sure to let us know at Upful Life and Live for Live Music so we can, paint the town and let people know how they can support these artists in your venue and just, like I said, independent, music in general. Now,
I appreciate that, and nothing would give me more pleasure, by the way, as the 23 East history well enough to know that if we could have Splintered Sunlight drive in and do a weekly show, even if it's audience free, bring it on. We'd love to create that content. We'd love to use the space for something meaningful. We'd love to support those guys. There's going to be some cool stuff we can do when we can safely have 15 people in a building together. And I just hope, like all of us, that that's sooner than later.
Yeah, man. We talked a lot about, business and the industry and stuff, but just on a personal level, you mentioned you're seeing a lot of your wife and kid and you just moved to a lovely house in Ardmore. What are you doing? How are you getting through? Like when you're not at your desk, when you're not on the horn, what is bringing you little slivers of joy amidst the panic and chaos?
Yeah. Well, to quote, I guess, John Prine, which feels apropos, we're pretty good, not bad, can't complain.
Right on.
And man, John Prine, first of all, I want to preface by saying it sounds like he is in stable condition, which is really spectacular news. And
Indeed.
Yesterday we got the news that he was ill, and he's become a favorite of mine, but it is a longtime favorite of Anna's entire family. And just for various personal reasons, that was really a heavy gut punch. And I just, it made me, first of all, reflect on the fact that we've got it pretty good, and that this was the first, work chaos aside, we're in this happy, cozy new home with a 1-year-old, and we're FaceTiming our family and friends, and we've got the technology of 2020, and things are okay for us. And to hear that someone that means that much to us, musically and personally, was struggling, was a hard hit. And I went outside, classic new house in the suburbs. I was moving yard waste to the curb for pickup. And our neighbors, who are awesome, and we share a driveway, and we've heard them playing Fish and Wilco and Dylan, and like, oh, okay, all right, they got it. I was walking outside, and they were playing John Prine on the speakers on their porch, and I saw them through the window, and I just mouthed John Prine, and one of them came out, and we just sort of looked at each other and acknowledged that we knew that he was sick, and both teared up and just couldn't really say much. And she basically said, "I'm sorry that I can't hug you." And we just cried together, and then I kept dragging yard waste out, and they kept playing John Prine songs, and it was just a really emotional,
wow,
sort of, refocusing of the fact that this is beyond moving shows and helping employees figure out their next paycheck. It's also life and death for some people, and I think that, given the circumstances, we're doing great. I have nothing to complain about. We're a mile from the music hall. I don't know if you saw my video, but we walked up there on St. Patty's Day and took some car bombs and made a funny video reel and got a little drunk. And, we're taking 2-3 mile walks every day that it's nice out. And it's fucking springtime. We're planting flowers. We're raking the lawn. It's like just being able to be outside and see the weather break, and be able to read and revisit some old photos and spend time with our 1-year-old. We're finding a lot of joy in the simple stuff that you get. Yeah, it's constantly on my to-do list, but I have a hard time finding the time for it. Suddenly we've got some time for it, and it feels good, frankly.
Yeah.
I hope that everybody can find some of that, whether it's interpersonal or, even for people who are alone, tapping into hobbies and tapping into art and music, and just finding some positives in the slow time.
Indeed, man, that's
what
great
are you
to
doing,
hear.
By the way,
well, I just want to say that was amazing to hear you talk about the moment with your neighbor and John Prine. You just painted the picture, and I think there's so much symbolism there in the unspoken emotion between you and your new neighbor, and your shared love of music and this man, and understanding the severity of what's happening and all of it. And so thank you for sharing that. And I think that, indeed, we're all very lucky. Like you, I'm in a place that I must say is pretty glorious out here in Northern California, on a big piece of land, lots of nature walks, gardens. I'm here with my fiance, who sadly, her story with her employment of 5 years, a wonderful restaurant called State Bird Provisions, came to an end last week, at least temporarily, maybe permanently, who knows. And she's been having a rough time with that. And similarly, her restaurant, which is incredible, people and food and all that, have also similarly coalesced to support one another. And even though they lost their jobs, they're still really making sure they're getting sorted out. So we are blessed. And I got up here to Northern California, just outside of Nevada City, not far from Tahoe, I guess, if you're thinking on a national sense. Yep. And I lived here for a time.
We're thinking on fish tour level. We're not far from Tahoe.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely. Yeah. And I lived here for a time. I still have some great relationships, and I work up here from time to time. So I've been lucky. I've been up here for almost 3 weeks, and I went and got Alicia about 2 weeks ago, 15 days ago, and we've got a shift pod on the side of a mountain, and we're spending our time outside and doing some inner work, and I'm eating great, and I'm a small group of people on a huge piece of land, like 5 people. We don't really come too close to one another, but we talk and we hang out and we check in with each other and we help out and do work on the land. And yeah, life slows down. An epic pause and a great equalizer. And, I'm trying to do my part, not just with this podcast, but some charity stuff that I'm lending my talents to, that I could tell you a little bit more about off air until we formally announce. But yeah, I'm trying to see how I can play a role in supporting, my community on a local level, on a music level, on a conscious and spiritual level. And that's why I called you, man. And, you're really like a force of nature, not just as a boss, but as a dude and a human being. And I know, to finish up here, and we're talking some silver linings, I know that you see the future that could even be stronger for independent music industry and people like yourself and sort of concert promoters and the little guy, maybe a bit of a leveling of the playing field and, maybe a little bit more unity moving forward for, the small and middle business in the music industry. If you wouldn't mind just kind of taking that.
No doubt, and thank you. I think, first of all, there's going to be a real need for independents to collaborate more, and I think that, frankly, includes developing artists and not just independent venues and promoters. Just better communication, better comparing of notes, being more organized, make it an easier decision for artists to be able to play these, strings of shows with independents in the same way that the Giants route tours, the Live Nations and AEGs. I think that's important, and I think now is a decent time to finally figure out how that can work better when normally we're all bogged down with just what's right in front of us. I also think that on an organizational level or just an individual level, now is the time to try to find some focused energy to work through back burner projects, simple stuff, project management and organization, research, databases, just getting your shit together in a way that, again, when do you have the time or luxury to pull back from your day-to-day insanity to drill down on some of that stuff. And that's something that I've got a lot of my team focused on, is just, organizing data and, getting ahead of, winter booking for next year, God willing. And, had a fun conversation with my team today about reevaluating our entire artist hospitality program for the music hall and, developing ideas for how we can tap the Ripplewood, our partners next door, and Tired Hands, brewery across the street, and La Colombe Coffee, and go from a place that, satisfies the hospitality budget to a place that wows people. And, if you are someone who feels confident that you're going to continue to do something close to what you were doing before when this all shakes out, take the opportunity to get ahead. And it may feel crazy to be thinking about how we can spend more money to be more hospitable when we're struggling to, figure out what tomorrow looks like. But I have to assume, optimistically and otherwise, that we've got a bright future ahead. And whenever it comes around, I want to be as well prepared for it as I possibly can be. I don't see what choice I have. So, there's that. And then I think there's going to need to be a loosening of, in the booking industry, there's become this dominance by Live Nation especially, but AEG is a part of it. There's a sort of bought and sold loyalty that they hold over artists' heads as they're developing, where, somebody gets to a decent position in a market and all of a sudden Live Nation jumps in and they offer them, a great festival look and a great opening slot. And then next thing you know, there's a level of guilt or strong arming to stay away from my club or another independent club, because while we gave you this opportunity, now we expect you to play our room. I think that this is going to require that everybody understand people are going to need gigs. And again, I can't speak for the arena level, but I know that 600 cap, 1,000 cap, 200 cap, people are going to have to play. And there's going to need to be a sort of recognition that every artist that makes it to the Wells Fargo Center in Philly and makes Live Nation a couple $1 million that night started in an Ardmore Music Hall or in a Milk Boy. And those venues have to work for Live Nation to tap into the talent as it grows. And I just think that, that sort of existential threat that they try to pretend they feel when, I'll give you an example. I was building a Ardmore Music Fest for October. I can't imagine I'm going to do it. I don't know for sure, but with Jazz Fest and Bonnaroo and Coachella and countless tours, everybody move into September, October, November. How do I relaunch a outdoor concept with risk associated right now? It probably doesn't make sense. But when I was going down that road, I can't tell you how many artists in my wheelhouse that I talked to who basically said that even if that play made sense for them, they would never get away with it because the Philly Live Nation office would never allow it. They would banish them from being able to play the Peach or from being able to play Camp Bisco, or the next time there's an opening slot at the Fillmore. There's this sort of bought loyalty pettiness that comes with Live Nation especially, and I think that the artists are going to need to help me and other small venues call them on their shit and make sure that everybody involved is advocating for local promoters and local artists getting the best opportunities they can, because that's ultimately going to grow them into the 2,500 plus level, which is where Live Nation thrives anyway. So I think there's going to need to be a new set of expectations there where people realize that, hey, you know what? You're not getting any love at the Foundry or the TLA or creative marketing. Nobody's being educated about you as a band. You're being bought by a big company that wants to secure your loyalty when you grow. And I think that I'm not asking for softballs. I'm not expecting that there's no competition at my level, but for those bigger promoters who are focused on those bigger levels to dissuade artists from taking smaller opportunities just because they don't want the relationship encroached upon, that's going to have to change. And I think that it will. My hope is that it will. And then, myself and other promoters like me are going to have to get creative with how to continue building new collaborations, new event concepts, new ways, like Everyone Orchestra, to bring together these incredible talents that we all, are blessed to connect with, and find new platforms for them to play their music, because they're going to need the gigs, and so am I.
Bro, I would follow you to the gates of hell. Straight up, man. So well articulated, and I couldn't co-sign it any more or any harder. It's a bit over my head, the level of the way you understand the dynamics of the relationship and the leverage and stuff. But I will say this much. Obviously, those companies had a couple really bad days when everything went down. And with their losses, and when they're doing their own circling the wagons, because you don't lose, whatever billions of dollars and not have to kind of circle the wagons and shuffle the deck. Maybe they will read those same tea leaves and say, you know what, our bread and butter is 2,500 plus, and we're not going to meddle in those other rooms, and let that sort of heal itself, and we'll focus on, where our real cash comes from. You got to hope that they don't. Look,
as I said, there was a level of, I guess, selflessness, for a lack of a better word, when this all started developing, at least for me, on the 600 cap level. And everybody just recognized that we all needed to dig in and do what we all needed to do to salvage the best next plan, the best next step. I can't, again, speak for the Live Nations and the arenas of the world, but my guess is that level of cooperation, it's not something that is their MO, and that selflessness, I think, is what I hope will come of all of this, is everybody looking at it and taking a real look at what do these artists need to sustain themselves to a point where they can grow into these 2,500 to 10,000 plus capacity draw, and what do these small promoters need to be able to foster that in a way that creates community and develops educational opportunities for people to get turned on to new talent. I think that if that selflessness pervades through Live Nation and AEG, and the bigger agencies and bigger managers out there, then it could ultimately be a better landscape. But it's gonna take a while to heal, for sure.
Yeah. Well, from your lips to jaw ears, and let that be the case, not just for the music industry and independent promoters and such, but for as a macro level, industry in general, and the little guy and family-owned businesses and regionals and such. So really, really astute wisdom as usual, CP.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. I'm still consumed day to day, and it's nice to pull back and actually think about all the things I'm thinking about. So thank you.
Yeah, man, it's an honor and a pleasure, and we'll continue to check in with you maybe in a month or two down the road. We'll see what shakes out. Maybe it'll be part 2, our long form thing, although that's got to be an in-person hang.
Well, I was about to say at the 32-minute mark, it's hard to say that this is no longer that, but
Yeah, well, the last one was like 100 minutes, so we got a ways to go. But I've been asking I'm going to do like 3 of these interviews per episode, maybe 1 per week while we get through this, or at least for as long as I can. So I'm trying to have one sort of uniform question that's maybe not so like doomsday or reactionary, but indeed the thread that weaves us all together, and anyone that really comes on my show, is music in some capacity. So I got to ask, is there an artist or a song or a show or an album that's getting you through at this time?
Great question. It's funny. The easy answer is no, because almost everything I'm listening to is whatever my hand or my kid's hand lands on in my record collection in my new living room. And that's been nice. It's been all over the place. It's been, I have a lot of classic rock, like most people with a vinyl collection. So there's been a lot of Beatles and Zeppelin and Cat Stevens and Paul Simon and, certainly the Paul Simons, the John Prines of the world. So many of those lyrics apply to fundamentally society-changing events, whether it's Vietnam or, various 60s, 70s movements. So there's parallels, at least thematically. And I think a lot of that stuff is hitting home. Again, John Prine especially. And then, there's the occasional need to throw on I walked by a sign today about a lawn boy at a home improvement store and thought, I should revisit that 45-minute lawn boy from 2 years ago, because when do I have 45 minutes to sit and listen to that? And I've been doing as much of that as I can, good Dead jams, good Fish jams, stuff that feels hopeful and inspired and happy. And I'm praying to God that I get to go to some Fish shows this summer with the squad and maybe even you out in Tahoe if things break the right way. So
we can only hope, man.
There's some of that for sure. I'm definitely clinging to some of the stuff that we thrive on because it's got a feel good theme, a feel good sound, and a community around it that I look forward to reconnecting to as soon as humanly possible.
Indeed. So well stated, my friend. Right on. So how can people find the Ardmore Music Hall fundraiser, the GoFundMe?
We've been pretty understated about it, I'll be honest. I'm sure if you search GoFundMe, Ardmore Music Hall, it'll pop up, but we've had it in our last couple email blasts, or if you go to our Facebook page, there's a link for it. And I think more than anything, keep an eye out, because we're definitely going to jump into the live stream game when we can. We're definitely going to release some really killer audio recordings that Jesse and Julian and our sound engineers have done over the years. This is a fun opportunity to revisit our archives, audio, video, and photo. We're going to find ways that are supportive of ourselves, but with any luck, some of the stimulus bill is going to support our team, and we'll be able to use our platform as a way to support musicians first and foremost. And nothing would give me more joy than that. So I hope that that's the way it goes, where, we're not sweating what to do for our people, and we can turn our attention to some other people who really need it. So I think just, stay tuned in, check in every week for what we've got going on and how you can get involved.
Right on. And I have no doubt that there'll be some listeners out there, your peers or folks in the music world, that'll be inspired what you had to say And, you may hear from some like-minded individuals who want to build moving forward. So I want to say thank you. Give my love to your lovely wife and young daughter. And we'll check in down the road to see how things are holding up in Ardmore and Philly.
Thanks, my man. It is truly a pleasure, and I'm so happy that you're in a good place out there, and can't wait to give you a big hug sometime soon.
Yeah, soon come, like the Rastas say.
Turn your lights down low, and you pull the window curtain. Oh, let the moon come shining in into our life again, saying, ooh, it's been a long, long time. Still I kept this message for you, girl, but it seems I was never on time.
And we're back. I want to say thank you to my man CP, Chris Perella. What a conversation. So articulate and heartfelt and inspiring to hear from him. He's just a born leader, that dude, and I just really admire and respect and love him. He's just a great dude. So check out CP, Chris Perella, if you're ever interested in seeing what's going on with the Ardmore Music Hall. And, if you're so inclined, support their staff, check their GoFundMe, and look out for those really exciting live stream situations that he is dreaming up. Philly, stand up. Love it when my hometowners are doing the damn thing. But my home away from home is always the great city of New Orleans, Crescent City. So dear to my heart. This would have been my 18th Jazz Fest, but it's been postponed, and hopefully, we'll return in 2020, but if we don't, so it goes. But I wanted to check in with some of my favorite peeps down there in my beloved Crescent City. And I started with another cat who had been on the podcast in the past, my man Billy Iuso, great singer-songwriter, rock and roll troubadour, transplant from the New York area, has been in New Orleans for like 20 plus years. He's like Meters fam, that I have a great bit of affection for musically, and just, again, a solid dude. So we're going to check in with Billy down there in New Orleans and hear how he's getting by, and give us the sort of lowdown on what it's like in that epicenter of the virus at this time. So I want to send a lot of love and vibes out to all peeps down there in NOLA. And we'll hear from Billy Iuso and then wrap things up for episode 29, Isolation Station, on the Upful LIFE Podcast. This is Billy himself doing Turn Your Lights Down Low, actually, off his, I believe it's on his Naked album.
I want to give you some love. I want to give you some good love.
Hello.
Hey, Billy, it's B. Getz. How you doing?
What's happening? How you doing?
Like we said, crazy times, unprecedented. So I appreciate you taking a few minutes to talk to me and to talk to the fans. And I know people out there are real concerned with the entire music industry, and especially New Orleans. So I just wanted to touch base with you, man. First things first, like outside of the music, how's Billy Iuso doing and the family and everything?
We're doing okay. I'm kind of a hermit by nature, so I haven't seen anybody but my four, people I live, the three people I live with, and my older son too, who lives outside of the house, but I saw him once since then. But I've been, since probably, first maybe March 11th. I played a gig on the 6th, and then I remember hanging out with somebody that following beginning of the week, and then pretty much after that, I've been just at home. So, and my family's pretty limited. I pulled my kids out of school kind of 2 days before they did it, made it mandatory. So, so we're all pretty good. Nobody's got any kind of symptoms or anything. So.
Well, that's good to hear, and sounds like you were a little bit ahead of the curve in terms of, knowing what you had to do and sort of like shutting it down. But
well, if you know me and you do a little, I'm more of a worldly thinker than just here in America. I keep my eyes wide open on the world. So I kind of started getting scared, or I wouldn't say scared, but just prepared and thinking about it a little bit ahead of some of the authorities. So yeah, but I'm kind of like that anyway. I'm protective, kind of, pack
Gotcha.
leader.
Right on, man. And how are your kids? Just their how are they like holding up in terms? I guess it's got to be frightening on a whole nother level when you're in your teens.
Yeah, they're handling it really cool. I have an interesting situation because my daughter is a senior, so like senior year is a big deal, and
Yeah.
it's, the prom, the pageantry, like all that stuff, and none of that's happening. And then the unknownness of which college she should go off to, or if it'll even start at time or whatever. So, but surprisingly, they're doing great. I mean, they're still taking classes online. She is a dancer, my daughter, so she goes and dances at my in-laws' house where nobody's staying right now. They have 2 houses, and so she goes down there and does a dance class because they got a nice big open room in my house.
That's a great outlet for her to be able to have that.
We had to buy him a computer. I mean, I had to go chip into what money I had already and buy him a computer. So, unforeseen expenses, early birthday present, whatever you want to call it. But, just trying to adapt. I mean, and I think that's the key word is adapt, survival is key. And I believe that that's not a problem. But adapting is always difficult.
Sure, especially when people are really set in their ways.
Sure, I'm 51 years old. I'm pretty set.
Right. On a local level, obviously there's been a lot reported about how things have really taken a turn for the worse in New Orleans. Do you remember, was there like a tipping point when you guys had like that holy shit moment?
I mean, I think the city itself has just gotten there maybe 2 weeks ago, really, really like, wow, this is happening. But, like everywhere, there's still people kind of doing their thing. And I mean, but, it's pretty much a ghost town right now. I don't see any traffic. And I live in the city. There's no sirens. There's no normal sounds of what normally goes on. It's pretty quiet. People are pretty much staying in now. A lot of people publicize certain things that have happened, and there was somebody selling crawfish somewhere that somebody said there was a big crowd, and but that gets sensationalized on Facebook and people pass it around. I mean, it's happening everywhere, but I think in general, the most people who are thinkers and responsible, we have all kinds in every community, so we're hanging in there. I think Mardi Gras was the big key of why we have so much. I mean, it was perfect timing for 1 million people to be in your city, so we were bound to get hit.
Yeah. I mean, it really was a perfect storm.
Sure, I mean, that's the science of it. I mean, Mardi Gras with all the numbers, that's why we are feeling it the way we are. So, personally, I don't really know anybody. I have some friends of friends, but I don't really know anybody. So that's good news.
Right. Well, Phil Frazier from Rebirth. I mean, maybe you don't know him personally.
You're right. I forgot. Yeah, that's bad. I forgot that. But yeah. But I mean, I wouldn't want to say how I know how he's doing because I even just forgot him.
Right.
lot to keep in your head. So
Yeah, you got to look out for yourself and your family, and
yeah,
just,
trying to do that is obviously, the priority. But I've definitely been reaching out to people I know who are living alone. I've reached out to people that I'm not really super close to, but I've read a post or something that kind of, maybe sent them a song, or you know what I mean. So it's all about pulling together.
yeah. That's beautiful that you're putting the music out there. I wanted to talk a little bit about the adaptation, as you mentioned. A lot of independent artists like yourself, and even some big name artists that are like on the national scale, but more so in our music community. How I know you through Jazz Fest and Jam Cruise and all that. There's been a lot of transitioning to the online streaming platforms, which has been, not that easy on the technological side. And there's a lot of figuring it out as you go. What has been your experience? I watched one of your streams, and I want to give you the opportunity.
I was one of the, in my circle of musician friends, I was one of the first that kind of popped up there. And the first one I did was really primitive, and it was me in a room, where I normally just kind of rehearse, and playing to a phone where I couldn't read the screen, and it was really kind of isolating, and the pressure of trying to finish each song is, because when I'm sitting at home, I might just play half a song, or I might work on a part, so to get in that mind space was weird. But then when it was over and I went back and read the comments and the donations, I was blown away. So it was like this wonderful experience too. And then I did another one last week, and I had it set up much better. I kind of got my game up a little bit. I had a microphone. I had a better recorder, and I could read the comments in real time, and that made it much more enjoyable. Because, I don't know what people get into music for, but I know what I got into music for, and it was the interaction. And when you're just playing in a room by yourself without interaction, it's not really what I signed up for. So I found a way to enjoy it, and I really enjoyed last week, and people have been wonderful. Everybody's dealing with their own hardships, and they're helping out where they can, no matter, if people have extra money, then they give, but it's a free thing, and it's cool, believe it or not, when I look back and see the donations, all these $5 tips or $2 tips or whatever, that adds up. I fed my family for 2 weeks, basically, by playing once a week. So, and for me, that's great, because I didn't have a huge calendar coming up, but I had work, and most of it was uncontracted, without deposits and such. So, and as you know, we were coming into April, which is pretty much a good, say, quarter of your salary all year.
Yeah.
That 1 month. So, I was personally, I was just coming out of a slow period, so I was happy to be digging out of that hole. So this came at a terrible time for that, but I'm enjoying the response I'm getting, and it is rewarding enough to, I'm writing set lists, and I'm digging back into catalog, and so I'm keeping my artistic side alive. Meanwhile, I'm gardening and cleaning backyards and organizing my record collection and
all the stuff you didn't have time for, right?
Yeah. So, and the family thing it's nice to see my 2 children, who are both teens, interact in a positive way instead of in a negative way, as teens sometimes do in the normal situation. So, there's positives that come out of all of it,
Definitely. Got to see the silver linings.
Yeah, and it's kind of, this is my own preaching and stuff, but the world has gotten so far gone greedy and crazy that this kind of puts us on the same level, no matter who you are. Everybody's scared. Everybody's, and everybody's in the same position, no matter what, how much money you could have made or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Everybody has a way their life has changed. So it's all put us back on the same page, at least.
Sure. Like a great equalizer.
Yeah, like whatever, leveling the playing field or whatever. But it just, so in that way, I'm hoping that's a positive thing that comes out of it. it's going to be tough, and I don't think it's a quick fix, and I don't think this is going to be, I went through Katrina. I thought that I was only going to get one disaster in my lifetime, but
yeah,
here we go again. So,
you're uniquely prepared emotionally and response-wise. Having lived through that, it's not quite as overwhelming maybe as it would have been had you not lived through Katrina.
Different. It's a whole different thing, but it has the same level of
fear.
Stress is the key, and just that whole not knowing.
Right.
At least with the hurricane, after a while, after 2 weeks, I knew that at some point I could go home. Right now I'm sitting here going, when can I leave home? So,
yeah, it's a flip the script for sure.
Uniquely different but similar. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy times.
I'm happy to hear that the streaming has been so rewarding for you and on different levels, and hopefully that's inspiring for folks that listen to this to hear. I know it's been a great way for artists to connect with their fans.
I've talked to people who are sidemen and stuff, and they say, well, we can't do that. And I'm like, you know what? Most people that are listening out there might have a job at a cubicle, and they would love to know how a tuba works or how a saxophone works. Maybe you can't go up there and play for an hour and a half like I can, but you can go up there for 20 minutes, explain your instruments, tell some stories, blow a little bit, and I think the average person would still tune in. You're not selling your music right now. You're selling the love of your music and let people support you, and they feel a part of it, and it's helpful to them too to see it. So I would tend to try to persuade anybody who tells me they can't get up there with some kind of interest to maybe get people to help if they need it.
Yeah, and there's like an intimacy. When I watch you perform or a Nick Cassarino or Lyle Davinsky, just hearing people sing these songs stripped down, there's an intimacy there. There's so much emotion in the performances because of the circumstances that it really transmits. And I think that's why people are inclined to tip, even if they don't have a lot of money, because they feel that.
It puts us in that uncomfortable zone a little bit as artists. I mean, we're used to getting on stages and you think that's hard. Well, we're used to that part. But now, like you say, there is a certain intimacy to it. Like, this is my house. Nobody knows this part of me, So, it's interesting. I do find it to be pretty rewarding in that aspect, and I think that'll also brings power back to the artist, which I love to see.
Yeah, also a great equalizer, not just the elite people or rich people, but also like wherever you are as an artist, like it's been very leveling and equalizing.
Not to mention, I've seen some great shows without leaving my house recently. I mean,
I can't beat that.
Al Di, I mean, these guys are in their living rooms playing for you too, and it's like, holy cow.
Aaron Neville's living room was unbelievable, too. Oh, man.
Al Di killed me, though. I was like, I better put the guitar down, man.
Right on.
And then Ivan's was great the other night, too, and I watched Anders, and, so and to be honest with you, if I was home, I wouldn't be going out singing that much music, so it's kind of cool, and in that way, I've been really enjoying it, so...
Yeah, and then you can just pick up either put your guitar down because you're like, blown away by Al, or you can pick it right up because, you're in your living room.
Yeah, true. Very true. Yeah.
So, that's really inspiring and positivity, and that's really, I think, what people love to hear. I definitely want to discuss some other stuff with you with regard to, the festivals changing and moving and the impact on the culture, but this is going to go on for a while, as you mentioned, so we'll pick that stuff up in a few weeks. Let's leave folks with that really beautiful, positive stuff that you just delivered. And to wrap it up, I wanted to ask, because obviously, I really love your catalog, but I also love a lot of the artists that you are influenced by or celebrate. So I'm just curious, what, if anything, if you could pick one song or one artist that's really getting you through these times.
God. I would say that my normal routine is to get into one artist for a while. Right now, and I think it's because I decided to clean out my record collection, I'm just listening to different ones all the time, and that's really what's getting me through. I listened to an old ZZ Top record the other day, and then I went to Fred Wesley and the Horny Horns, and I listened to a Radiators album that I didn't even know I had, I bought it when I was a teenager, so I can't say one artist.
Okay. Well, you gave me 3 good ones. That's great.
If I had to go, my go-to, if they said, well, you can only listen to one more artist, I'd have to say Bob Marley. So, it's that obvious for me.
Yeah, I've been on a steady diet of reggae. I'm actually talking to you from way out in the sticks in NorCal, and we've been on a steady diet of all reggae. Just really, really spiritual music at these times.
It is. It always, I listen to it in headphones before I go on stage most times because it puts me somewhere more positive and takes me out of the so-called rat race for a minute. So that's always spinning at some point, but
yeah, and that's really what's happening here with this epic pause is taking us all out of the rat race for a minute.
Yeah, that's you got to look for some of the silver lining, and that's definitely part of it. So.
Right on, Billy. Well, we'll keep watching you on your streams and listening to your music, and I'm glad that we got a chance to hear from you. Where can people find you?
Wednesday nights, basically, but I am starting at different times now and then because I've been using other host sites. So, but if you go to my Facebook page, you'll find out all the info you need. The next one, of course, is April Fool's Day at 4:20 New Orleans time.
All right. Well, this will go up before then. And actually, it'll be on Wednesday. This is going to likely come out, so hopefully we'll get it out in time for people to hear it.
Yeah, you're right.
And the best part is, they're saved on there, so you can always revisit them after the fact.
Right. Yeah, that's right. People wake up in the morning and they type to me, "Oh, I missed your show." I'm like, "Man, it's still up there."
Yep. Technology's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah, it can be.
Well, it can be. Right. It's a slippery slope.
It was good to hear your voice and
likewise.
Nice to talk to people. Especially right now, and hang in there.
You do the same, and we'll definitely check in with you in a couple of weeks for an update.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Peace and love.
Yeah. Love to you. Peace.
Now I got them, some people so dumb. Slew them and their feelings, they carry. Them done go already and them can't say them sorry now. Slew them and their feelings, they carry. When Benji and Will them again, now I got them. Who them a could have what that them a try. This king say I say what you will let them die now. Who them a me go see them with this spell. This double X I know them soul can't handle them. Who them a could have who them want us. Them this Benji I know them all by this dust now. Who them a never tell them to start. And Charlie in the building alright. Because we are dead man them. Don't be man them. Don't know with them. The fire be burn them. Don't condemn. Dead man them. Them don't know like we and we don't know like them.
Ooh.
Benji. Capleton. Dub Effects. I wanted to come out the gates with something really hard. Just a huge fan of this dub plate. Slew them. Capleton Dub FX. I want to say thank you, Billy Iuso. That was a great powwow as usual. And check Billy out on, it sounds like Wednesday nights. He's going to be doing his live stream. Take care of the tip jar for all the artists, everybody out there streaming. I'm going to do some more plugging of different events and stuff, but I kind of just came off the hill and threw this podcast together. And next week I'm going to try to have a little bit of a special section for the different live stream endeavors. But Questlove every night, 5, 6, 7 hours. Stevie Wonder, Native Tongue, slow jams, reggae, you name it. Quest, Amir, we love you. Thank you. Everybody check that out on YouTube and IG. I've been doing it like every freaking night. So shout out Questlove, shout out Badu. She did the Apocalypse 1 concert. That was fantastic. She's got another one in the pipeline, I think, in about a week. So with that, we're going to move into the Vibe Junkie Jam of the Week. It kind of feels funny doing that with all the serious topics and stuff, but music is what gets us through. I've been on the heavy reggae kick. I don't think I'm going to be exclusive for the whole Isolation Station series, strictly reggae. But, ITAL is vital. Low-tal is fatal.
So for now, we're gonna stick with the vibes. And you're gonna ride out with my man Lutan Faya. It's a dub plate. I don't even know what it's called, but he's just slaying over the Dr. Dre beat from Chronic 2001. The shit is bananas, just like this Capleton shit you're hearing right now. So this is how I'm getting by out on the mountain with the reggae vibration. So I want to say thanks to everybody who tuned in. Thanks to Kendall and CP and Billy and everyone out there. Just big love, and live your best life. Live the Upful life to the best of your abilities at this time. Love each other. Love yourselves. And we'll see you in about a week on the Upful Life Podcast. I'm your host, B. Getz. Yes, indeedy.
With them one come envy.
Yeah, let me tell you something. This is Irie sound, the boom sound. Me I say, man. Zero. The whole of yeah, man. I said Jericho, it's all blessed. Me I say, nothing good over evil. Let that arise and all his enemy them scatter. Yes, they that hate him fled the presence of Rasta. Oh yeah, oh yes, oh yeah. King Emmanuel the seventh. Yes, Lutan put it upon your back. Hear me out. Alright, well, can't be good, be careful. Tell me if there is a good lion or a mad bad bull. Well, can't be good, be careful. I lick them down from a corruption, them a fool boy. Can't be good, be careful. Tell me if there is a good lion or a mad bad bull boy. Can't be good, be careful. I go lick them down. Alright, just show me go past them fundaments with them twisting up face. Them say them great and a fight for space, but them late. Hey, them no got no loving at them heart. The whole of them a prayer hate. Hey, blood is on the ropes are way late. Alright, now tell me about this sweat because of that go get my vex. Among the least and among the greatest, me go bomb them filthiness, yes. Chop them set and not them selfish catch. Oh yes, them a lead is unpressed. I tell about, can't be good, be careful. Tell me if you eat a good lion or a mad bad bull. Well, can't be good, be careful. I realize go slew them from a corruption, them a bull bun. Can't be good, be careful. Tell me if you eat a good lion or a mad bad bull. Boy, can't be good, be careful. I realize go slew them. Oh yes, it's like, well, them not see how this west get desolate. Look how the wicked them confused and perplexed. Just visit them in a them own craftiness. I like the tower of the bell, them go wreck. Them go reap corruption to them throwing at the flesh. Them feel like to them all so wise and perfect. Them got a dirty appetite, them young filthiness. Yes, them a wanna like swine. Alright, oh yeah, yes. Can't be good, be careful. Tell me if you eat a good lion or a mad bad bull. Well, can't be good, be careful. I realize go slew them from a corruption, them a bull. Well, can't be good, be careful. Tell me if you eat a good lion or a mad bad bull. Boy, can't be good, be careful. I realize go slew them. Oh well, just show me go past them fundaments with them twisting up face. Them say them great and a fight with space, but them late. Hey, them no got no loving at them heart. The whole of them a player hate. Hey, bloody turn legally. Oh yes, now tell me say respect because of that go get my vex. Among the least and among the greatest, me go bomb them filthiness. Yes, chop them straight and not them selfish catch. Them the sound of some leeches and pest. It's like them no see down this west get desolate. Tell me if you eat a good lion or a mad bad bull. Oh, can't be good, be careful. Oh yeah, yeah, yes. Alright, wow. Well, can't be last year. Thanks and praises, saint. Lutan find a Jamaica Spanish town, old capital. Yeah, you know.